If you're an older man who still touches yourself in private, please don't scroll past this. I need you to hear something that no one talks about, but every man deserves to know. Because the truth isn't in whether you do it, it's in how you do it. And that how may be quietly draining your strength, dulling your sensitivity, and chipping away at the quiet confidence you used to carry without even thinking. Not overnight, but gradually, like a slow leak in a tire, barely noticeable, until one day you can't move the way you used to. My name is Dr. Moit Kara. For over 30 years, I've sat across from men in their 60s, 70s, even 80s. Men who still wanted to feel alive, wanted to feel something. And I can tell you with absolute certainty, this is one of the most common, least understood issues I see. Because we were never taught this part. We were told it's either good or bad, clean or dirty, normal or shameful. But the truth, it's far more human and far more important than anyone admits. Because while self-pleasure can be a tool for vitality, healing, and even connection, it can also, if done the wrong way, become the silent thief, stealing your drive, dulling your edge, and leaving you wondering what changed. In this video, I'll reveal the 10 hidden risks of masturbation after 60. Not to shame you, but to wake you up. So you can turn this private ritual into something that protects your prostate, boosts blood flow, restores your testosterone, and deepens your intimacy with yourself and with others. And before we're done, I'll show you the exact 7-second method I give my patients to reignite firmness and energy, naturally, safely, and without prescriptions. This conversation may be uncomfortable, but it might also be the most important one you've had in years. So take a breath and let's begin, because your body is still capable, your desire still matters, and you deserve to feel like yourself again. I've spent the better part of 3 decades walking alongside men who've quietly wondered, is something wrong with me? Not because they've stopped functioning entirely, but because something feels different. Office duller, less like a spark, and more like going through the motions. My name is Dr. Moit Kara. I've been a men's health specialist for over 30 years. And if there's one thing I've learned after thousands of conversations in my clinic, it's this. Most men think masturbation is black or white, good or bad. But the truth, it's more like a spectrum. And where you fall on that spectrum depends on something most people never think about, your relationship with the act. You see, for some men, self-pleasure is a moment of self-care, a way to honor their body and release stress in a healthy, balanced rhythm. But for many, especially in their later years, it becomes something else entirely, a silent substitution, a habit without connection, a routine that quietly rewires the body, drains the hormones, dulls the senses, and slowly pulls you out of touch with yourself and with the people around you. This isn't about judgment, it's about understanding. Because when no one teaches you the risks, you can't possibly see the patterns forming beneath the surface. Not until one day, what used to make you feel like a man starts to feel mechanical, muted, or just not worth it anymore. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through 10 invisible risks most men over 60 face when it comes to self-pleasure. Risks that most doctors never bring up, not because they don't matter, but because they were never trained to look. More importantly, I'll show you how to reclaim this part of your life, not by giving it up, but by changing how you approach it, so that it nourishes you again, so that it restores your sensitivity, rebuilds your connection, and helps you feel more like yourself. Not just physically, but emotionally, energetically, and intimately. And before we finish, I'll share the same 7-second daily ritual I give to men in their 60s, 70s, even 80s. Something so simple, so natural, and yet so powerful that many of them wake up feeling more like themselves than they have in years. If you've been silent about this part of your life, you're not alone. But I promise you, there is nothing shameful about wanting to feel alive again. There is only wisdom in learning how to do it better. Let's begin. Before we dive in, let me ask you something simple. If this conversation already feels like it's speaking to a quiet part of you, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Not for me, for you. Because what we talk about here isn't surface-level health advice. It's the stuff no one else is saying, but every man over 60 deserves to hear. And if you've ever felt unseen, unheard, or just plain tired of guessing, this space was made for you. Also, do me a small favor. Drop a 1 in the comments if this video resonates with you, a 0 if it doesn't. Either way, I read every response because this isn't a lecture. It's a conversation. One I've been honored to have with men all over the world. Now let's begin with the risk most men never see coming. Not because it's invisible, but because it masquerades as something else. We often call it independence, but sometimes it's just isolation in disguise. Risk number 1, social isolation. I remember a man named Paul, a retired high school teacher, 67, sharp mind, warm voice. But when he sat down across from me in my office, he carried that kind of silence. The kind that doesn't come from peace, but from slowly fading out of the picture. We made small talk for a few minutes. Then he looked down and said, "Doc, I haven't hugged anyone in months, but I still, take care of things. That bad?" That question stayed with me, not because of what he was doing, but because of why. There's nothing inherently wrong with self-pleasure. Done mindfully, it can be part of a healthy, grounded life. But when it slowly replaces intimacy instead of supporting it, when it becomes the only outlet for feeling something, that's when the ground starts to shift beneath a man's feet. You see, many men in their 60s, 70s, even 80s drift into routines that are safe, but silent. The morning coffee, the quiet evenings, the solo release, and over time, without even noticing, they stop reaching for others. Not just romantically, emotionally, socially, even spiritually. Pleasure fills the gap until the gap becomes a canyon. And what's lost isn't just physical touch. It's the subtle spark of being seen, a laugh across the dinner table, a conversation that matters, a glance that says, "I still see you." That's the real loss. Not sex, but connection. I've seen men stop dating, stop calling, stop caring, because this private habit became easier than the vulnerability of reaching out. Easier than rejection. Easier than wondering if anyone still wants what you have left to give. But here's the truth. Something few people will say out loud. Touch is not just pleasure, it's medicine. It keeps your nervous system alive. It fuels your testosterone. It anchors your self-worth. When we stop reaching for others, our world doesn't just shrink, it starts to fade. Not because we're old, but because we stopped believing we were wanted. So if you've noticed yourself turning inward more often, if your private life has become the only place you feel something, that's not weakness. That's a signal that you're wired for more, and that more is still possible, no matter how long it's been. Rebuilding connection doesn't have to mean dating again. Sometimes it starts with something small, a call to an old friend, a walk through a local park, a conversation at the grocery store. Intimacy isn't always romantic. Sometimes it's just being looked in the eye, being called by name, being reminded that you still exist and you still matter. Because the moment we stop believing we deserve closeness is the moment we start calling isolation freedom. And you deserve better than that. Risk number 2, skin microlesions. He came into my clinic looking slightly embarrassed, early 70s, dressed neat like a man raised to show respect, even when talking about something personal. He shifted in his chair, lowered his voice and said, "Doc, after there's this irritation. Not always, but lately, more than before." And I knew right then, this wasn't just physical discomfort. It was the quiet worry that maybe something was wrong with him, that maybe age had caught up to him in a way he didn't understand. But here's the truth I told him, and the truth I want to tell you. Your skin isn't failing, it's changing, and it deserves to be treated with more care than it ever has before. You see, the skin of the penis is like silk over time-worn leather, thin, sensitive, and more vulnerable with age. Years of friction, a natural loss of collagen, and reduced elasticity all combine to make the skin more prone to what we call microlesions. Tiny, often invisible tears that form during aggressive or rushed self-pleasure. Most men don't notice at first. A little sting, a bit of redness. It fades, so they ignore it. But over time, those micro tears pile up, like walking the same trail every day until it becomes a rut. And those small injuries, they cause more than soreness. They can trigger inflammation, reduce sensitivity, and open the door to infection, bacterial, even fungal. Here's the hardest part. Many men blame themselves. They think their hormones are broken or that their nerves have given up, when really it's just their technique that needs to change. Because what worked at 25 may not serve you at 70, and that's not a loss, it's a chance to evolve. So what can you do? First, slow down. You're not racing the clock. This isn't a sprint, it's a conversation with your body. Second, use lubrication. Not spit, not lotion. A proper water-based lubricant reduces friction, protects the skin, and actually helps maintain long-term sensitivity. Third, reframe the experience. You're not just getting it done, you're tuning in, listening, exploring. Because this phase of life isn't about less pleasure. It's about better pleasure, deeper, smarter, kinder to the man you are now. And let me say this clearly, there is nothing weak about adjusting how you touch yourself. There is nothing shameful about learning a new rhythm. In fact, there is deep masculine power in working with your body, not against it. Awareness is not overthinking, it's wisdom. And wisdom is what separates a habit from healing. So if you've noticed irritation, soreness, or a subtle loss of sensation, don't panic, don't retreat into shame, just shift. Treat your skin the way you treat something precious, because that's what it is. Still alive, still capable, still yours. Risk number 3, desensitization. He was 64, healthy, sharp, still working part-time, by all appearances, doing just fine. But when he sat across from me, I saw it in his face before he said a word. That look of quiet frustration, that question he didn't want to ask but couldn't ignore anymore. Doc, I can still finish on my own, but with my wife, it's different. It just doesn't feel the same. I don't know what's wrong with me. What he described is more common than you think. And it's not a failure of manhood. It's not low testosterone. It's not even necessarily a circulation issue. It's something I call quiet conditioning. And it happens slowly, silently. But when it does, it changes everything. Here's how it works. When you stimulate yourself in the exact same way, again and again, same grip, same pressure, same rhythm, same fantasy, same screen, your nervous system starts to build a shortcut, a trench. And every time your arousal comes, it follows that one narrow path. No detours, no variation. Imagine pouring water down a dry hill. The first time, it flows freely. But if you keep pouring it in the same spot, soon there's a groove so deep it can't go anywhere else. That's desensitization. Your brain and body learn to associate pleasure only with that specific sequence, and eventually they stop responding to anything outside of it. So what does that feel like? You need more intensity just to get aroused. Real-life intimacy feels muted. You struggle to climax unless the conditions match your solo routine exactly. And when that happens, you start questioning everything. Your desire, your masculinity, your connection with your partner. It creates distance, confusion, even shame. But hear me clearly, this is not brokenness. This is conditioning, and it can be unlearned. Here's how to begin. Change your rhythm, vary your grip, switch hands, shift positions, reduce dependency on screens. Instead, try memory, imagination, connection, slow down. You're not racing toward release. You're exploring, like someone rediscovering a language they once spoke fluently. Because the goal isn't just climax, it's awakening, not just in the body, but in the mind. I tell my patients this all the time. Your nervous system is not broken. It's just been overtrained in one direction. Give it time. Give it space. Let it remember how to feel again. I've watched men rebuild connection with their partners after years of numbness without a single pill. They didn't need more performance. They needed more permission to approach themselves with curiosity instead of urgency. And if you're feeling distance between where you are and where you used to be, that distance isn't a wall, it's a bridge waiting to be rebuilt. And it starts here, with your willingness to explore differently, to touch differently, to wake your body up, gently, patiently, and without shame. Risk number 4, masking erectile dysfunction. He was 68, strong frame, clean bill of health, worked out 3 times a week. From the outside, he looked like the picture of aging well. But when we sat down together, there was a heaviness behind his eyes, a weight he had carried quietly for too long. After a few moments, he exhaled and said, "Doc, I can still get hard on my own, but with my wife, it just doesn't happen anymore. So I've stopped trying." That moment wasn't about defeat, it was about misunderstanding. Because what he thought was just a relationship problem was actually his body trying to whisper something much more serious. Here's what most men don't know. Your erections are messengers. They're not just about sex. They're your body's early warning system, specifically for your cardiovascular health. When blood flow begins to slow, when arteries lose flexibility, when testosterone declines, or when nerves stop firing the way they used to, it often shows up first in the bedroom. And yet, because masturbation is usually simpler, less pressure, less vulnerability, you might still perform when you're alone. So you think, everything's fine, it must be stress or age. But that assumption, it's like patching a leak without checking where the water's coming from. This is the danger of masking. Masturbation can bypass the complexity of partnered intimacy, the psychological presence, the deeper arousal pathways, the subtle blood flow demands. So while it feels like proof that you've still got it, it can hide the very dysfunction that needs your attention. And when that dysfunction is ignored, it can point to bigger risks: heart disease, diabetes, low testosterone, silent vascular issues, not years from now, but right now, quietly, under the surface. Here's the good news. When caught early, these issues are treatable, reversible, sometimes even preventable. But you have to listen, not just to the moments you succeed alone, but to the patterns that shift when connection enters the room. If you notice your erections aren't as firm, don't last as long, or disappear completely during intimacy with a partner, don't chalk it up to age. Don't wait. And above all, don't hide, because what you think is a bedroom problem might be a blood flow problem, a hormone problem, a heart problem. And here's what I need you to hear. There is no shame in asking for help. What's dangerous is silence. What's risky is pretending it's all okay when your body is asking you to pay attention. I'd rather see a man early when we can tweak diet, movement, circulation, and hormones naturally, than see him later when the damage has already taken root. You don't need a workaround. You need a wake-up call, and this might be it. So if things feel different when you're with someone else, don't brush it off. Let that be the invitation to go deeper into your health, your strength, your future. Because you're not losing your edge. You're being offered a chance to reclaim it before it slips further away. Risk number 5, nerve compression from posture. He was 71, soft-spoken, thoughtful. He sat down across from me and said something most men would brush off. "Doc, there's this strange numbness, kind of a buzzing down there. It's not pain exactly, but it's not right." He thought it might be circulation, maybe aging, maybe nothing. But after a careful exam, I saw the real cause. It wasn't his blood, it was his posture. Something so simple, yet so easily overlooked. Here's what most men don't realize. The way you sit, especially when you're alone, especially during self-pleasure, can have a direct impact on your nerve health. You see, nestled deep in your pelvis is a nerve called the pudendal nerve. It's the one responsible for sensation in the penis, the perineum, the pelvic floor. It's what lets you feel everything. And here's the catch. When you spend long periods sitting on hard surfaces, in slouched positions, or in chairs that don't support your spine, you compress that nerve, bit by bit, day by day, until one morning, what used to feel alive starts to feel distant. The signs are subtle at first. A faint numbness, a tingling sensation that lingers, a drop in sensitivity during pleasure, and often men assume it's hormones or aging. But in truth, it's mechanical. It's posture, it's pressure, it's years of sitting the wrong way in silence. But the good news? This one is easy to fix once you know what's happening. Start by changing your position. Avoid sitting forward in hard chairs. Don't hunch. Don't lean into tension. Instead, try reclining. Lay down with a pillow under your knees to take pressure off the lower back. Let your pelvis relax, not compress. And during the day, move. Stand up every 30 to 60 minutes. Stretch, breathe, give your body a break from stillness. Because your nervous system isn't just electrical, it's physical. It needs space, it needs breath, it needs freedom. Here's what I tell my patients. Comfort isn't indulgent, it's protective. The way you position your body, even in your most private moments, tells your nervous system whether it's safe or strained. And when you start giving your nerves the room they deserve, you begin to feel again. Not just sensation, but self. The kind of grounded masculinity that comes not from force, but from awareness. So if you've felt yourself growing numb where you once felt alive, don't panic, just pause. And ask yourself, am I giving my body the posture it needs to truly feel? Because even something as small as how you sit can shape how fully you live. Risk number 6, using it as your only emotional outlet. He said it quietly, almost like he was confessing a secret. Some days I just get tired of feeling things. Masturbation helps me shut it off. He wasn't talking about lust, not really. He was talking about loneliness, about the silence that settles when no one calls, about the weight that builds in the chest after too many days that feel the same. And I understood him. Because for many men, especially those who are retired, widowed, or living alone, self-pleasure becomes more than release. It becomes escape, a soft refuge, a way to feel something when life has stopped offering much to feel. And let's be honest, on a biological level, it works. Orgasm floods the body with calming chemicals, dopamine, oxytocin, prolactin. They soothe the nervous system. They create a temporary sense of peace, even warmth. But when it becomes the only lever you pull, day after day, emotion after emotion, it begins to shift. It stops being relief and starts becoming a kind of emotional sedative, not because you're chasing pleasure, but because you're running from feeling. And here's the quiet danger. When we use orgasm to numb stress, sadness, grief, boredom, even anger, we stop giving those feelings room to move. And emotions that don't move don't disappear. They just go deeper. You may not even notice the cost right away, but slowly you stop picking up the phone. You skip the walk. You let your guitar gather dust. You stop reaching out because it's easier to stay home and press repeat. What was once a simple act of release becomes a habit that cages you, not physically, emotionally. But let me be clear, there is nothing weak about needing comfort. Every man, no matter his age, needs ways to soothe his heart. What matters is range. What matters is rhythm, because true emotional strength doesn't come from avoiding the storm. It comes from learning to ride it, sometimes alone, sometimes with others. So what can you do? Start small. Call someone, even just to say hello. Take a walk without headphones. Join a group where your name is known. Move your body, even if only a little. Let silence be a doorway, not a prison. Because as good as orgasm may feel in the moment, it's not a replacement for purpose, for presence, for being part of something larger than yourself. You were made to feel, and that means all of it, not just the parts you can control with your hands. And remember this, relief is important, but connection, that's where the healing lives, and it's not too late to find it. Risk number 7, guilt or shame. He was 72. A retired pastor, soft-spoken, carried himself like a man who had spent a lifetime holding space for others, but never quite learned how to hold that same space for himself. When the topic of sexual health came up, his eyes dropped. He looked down at his hands and said, almost like a whisper, "I still do it sometimes. But afterward, I feel like I've done something wrong. I can't even look at myself in the mirror." And my heart ached, not because of what he did, but because of what he had learned to believe about it. Here's the truth no one talks about. For many men of the older generation, especially those raised in strict religious or cultural traditions, pleasure was never just pleasure. It was wrapped in rules, whispers, warnings. It was something you did in darkness and carried in silence. And long after the body changes, those messages stay. They echo, they form beliefs, and those beliefs turn into shame, quiet, chronic shame that settles deep in the chest like a stone. So even now, decades later, I meet men who touch themselves and then punish themselves. Not with words, but with silence. Not with guilt trips, but with withdrawal. Pulling away from their own bodies, from their self-worth, from joy. Not because the act is wrong, but because the story they were told still lives inside them. Let me say this clearly, and I want you to hear it with your whole being. There is nothing shameful about caring for your body. There is nothing immoral about seeking comfort, pleasure, or connection, especially in this stage of life, when intimacy may be harder to come by, but never less needed. Masturbation, when done with intention and awareness, isn't a weakness. It's not a failure. It's not dirty, it's human. And yet, when guilt runs unchecked, it becomes more than a feeling. It becomes physiology. Chronic shame increases cortisol, disrupts your nervous system, erodes your ability to feel pleasure, and perhaps worst of all, it convinces you that you're unworthy of the very things you were born to receive: touch, closeness, joy, peace. So where do you begin? You don't start by changing what you do. You start by changing what you believe. That might mean speaking with a therapist who understands sexuality and aging. It might mean rewriting the script in your own mind, replacing judgment with compassion, replacing shame with understanding. Because you're not broken, you're not impure, you're not a relic of regret, you're a man with needs, with a body, with a story, and with a right to honor all of it, without shame. Risk number 8, pelvic congestion. He was in his late 60s, warm eyes, gentle demeanor. He sat down and said something I've heard in different forms more times than I can count. "Doc, I don't know how to explain it exactly. It's like this heavy, dull ache down there. Not sharp, not painful, just off. Like something's not right." He wasn't sick, no signs of infection. Prostate exam came back clean. But when we talked about routine, what his days looked like, what his habits had become, the picture became clear. Since retiring, he said, the days had grown quiet, less structure, more time alone. And to cope with the boredom, the restlessness, the soft ache of unspoken loneliness, he found himself turning to masturbation. Not occasionally, not thoughtfully, but habitually, 2, sometimes 3 times a day. He shrugged and said, "It helps me sleep. It gives me something to do." But now his body was speaking up. What he was feeling was something many men don't realize even exists. Pelvic congestion. It's what happens when stimulation outpaces recovery. When ejaculation becomes too frequent, especially without movement, rest, or variation, the blood vessels and soft tissues in the pelvic region start to swell, tighten, and protest. It builds quietly, a heaviness in the testicles, an ache behind the pubic bone, a pressure that lingers long after the act is done. It doesn't feel dangerous, but it doesn't feel right either, like a traffic jam in your own body with nowhere to go. And here's what matters most. This isn't about shame, it's about rhythm. It's about balance. Your body, especially now, needs time to recover, to reset, to breathe. The systems that manage blood flow, muscle contraction, hormone release, they're more delicate than they were at 25, not weaker, just wiser. And that wisdom asks you to listen more closely. So if you've felt that dull, dragging ache, if you notice tension or soreness after frequent solo sessions, your body isn't failing. It's signaling. It's asking you for space, for moderation, for rhythm. Most men in their 60s and beyond do best with a few days between releases. Not as punishment, but as a way to restore strength instead of draining it. Because pleasure doesn't increase with repetition. In fact, the more you pause, the more vibrant it often becomes when it returns. So if your body feels heavy, if something feels off in a way you can't name, don't ignore it. Don't power through. Just give yourself the gift of rest. Because sometimes the most healing thing you can do is to do a little less. And let your body remind you how good it feels to be in balance again. Risk number 9, potential impact on semen quality. He walked into my office with quiet excitement, 61 years old, recently remarried, hope in his eyes, but just beneath it, a trace of hesitation. "Doc, we've been trying for a baby. She's younger. We're hopeful, but it's been 6 months, and nothing yet." He wasn't desperate, but he was invested. And I could feel how much this mattered to him, not just biologically, but emotionally. A chance to build something new in this later season of life. A legacy. His labs looked good, hormones in range, no glaring red flags. But when I asked about his sexual routine, he paused. "Pretty often," he said. "Every day, sometimes more. It helps me relax." I figured the more, the better. And that's when I gently offered him a truth most men have never been told. When it comes to fertility, more isn't always better. You see, even though the male body continues to produce sperm well into later life, quality matters just as much as quantity. And when ejaculation happens too frequently, the body doesn't always have time to fully replenish what it needs to deliver its best. It's like scooping water from a well that hasn't had time to refill. You still get water, but not at the depth or richness that's possible when you wait. Research shows that for men, especially those over 60, an abstinence window of 2 to 5 days before attempting conception often results in higher sperm concentration, improved motility, better overall semen quality. It's not about withholding for the sake of sacrifice. It's about timing the rhythm of your body with the rhythm of your intention. So what does this mean for you? If fatherhood is still something you desire, or even just something you want to preserve as a possibility, give your body the conditions it needs to succeed. That might mean spacing out ejaculation, creating room for restoration before release. Because this isn't about age limiting your potential, it's about understanding how your body operates now, not how it did at 25. And here's the part we often forget. Fertility isn't just physical, it's symbolic. It represents energy, vitality, creation, hope. So if that spark still lives in you, nurture it with care. Not with urgency, but with presence, with patience, with purpose. Because whether you're trying to conceive or just stay connected to the possibility, your body will show up for you if you give it the space to do so well. Risk number 10, disconnection from reality. He was 73, wise, honest, and painfully self-aware. We weren't even talking about sex when he said it, but his words landed like a confession whispered through decades. It's not that I don't want to be with someone, it's just real life doesn't excite me anymore. I don't know when it happened. I just stopped feeling anything with a real person. He wasn't broken, he wasn't bitter, but he was quietly disconnected. And what he was describing wasn't erectile dysfunction. It wasn't low testosterone. It was something far more subtle and in many ways, far more dangerous. It was the conditioning of the mind through fantasy, because the male brain, especially as it ages, is still exquisitely sensitive to novelty and stimulation. And when we feed it a steady diet of high-intensity, curated, exaggerated imagery, especially through screens, it begins to recalibrate what it sees as exciting and what it sees as enough. The result? Real touch feels flat. Real voice lacks spark. Real connection feels like it's moving in slow motion next to the lightning pace of digital stimulation. You start craving the highlight reel and losing interest in the full, unedited film of real life. Here's the quiet danger. Fantasy becomes the comfort zone. It doesn't require vulnerability. It doesn't ask anything of you. It always delivers, always obeys, always satisfies in the moment. But it comes with a cost. Sensitivity fades, presence shrinks, and slowly, your ability to be moved by real life, by real people, starts to wither. You may start comparing partners, consciously or not, to images that were never real to begin with. You may feel bored in the moments that used to stir your heart. And worst of all, you might stop trying, because real intimacy feels like it can't compete. But here's the beautiful truth. Your brain is not stuck. It's not too old to change. It's plastic. It's responsive. It's waiting for new input. You can retrain your arousal pathways, not by suppressing desire, but by redirecting it. Start small. Take breaks from digital content. Practice arousal without a screen. Let your imagination do the work. Let memory play a role. Let anticipation return, slow, simmering, sacred. And when possible, bring it back to real touch, real breath, real connection. Because what awakens the heart in this stage of life isn't always friction. It's presence. You don't need fireworks. You need warmth. You need someone's hand in yours, someone's eyes meeting yours, the softness of being fully seen. And you don't have to chase that in pixels. You can find it again, in skin, in soul, in silence. Disconnection isn't destiny. It's just a detour. And you, my friend, can still come home. So now you know. This conversation was never about whether masturbation is right or wrong. It was about how you relate to it, and whether that relationship is building you up or quietly breaking you down. Because after 60, it's not black or white. It's not about denial or indulgence. It's about intention, rhythm, awareness. We've explored 10 hidden risks, not to scare you, but to wake you, to bring to light what most men suffer through in silence. The isolation that masquerades as independence, the numbness mistaken for age, the habits that feel safe, but slowly chip away at vitality. And most of all, the belief that you have to figure this out alone. You don't. You are not broken. You are not past your prime. You are not too old to change, to feel, to rediscover connection in a fuller, wiser way. If this conversation is stirring something in you, a question, a memory, a quiet truth you haven't said out loud in years, hit that subscribe button. Not because of algorithms, not because of numbers, but because this space was created for you. A space where no one laughs at aging, where we talk about the things no one else does, where your experience, your story, your healing matters. And if this video speaks to you, type a 1 in the comments. If not, type 0. Either way, I want to hear from you. Because what we build here isn't a monologue. It's a circle of men who are done pretending everything's fine when it's not. Done holding questions in silence. Ready to walk this road with wisdom, not shame. So take a moment. Let your voice be heard. Because someone else reading that comment might realize he's not alone either.